hate to say this, but we've got a crisis on our hands. We're watching an entire generation of young men vanish right before our eyes. They're struggling in school, retreating from their friends, and turning to the darkest corners of the internet looking for answers. You saw it in Netflix, Adolescence. That story about a 13-year-old boy arrested for murdering his female classmate. It hit a nerve because it exposed the ugly truth. Too many boys today are drowning in anger, loneliness, and invisibility. But here's the hard reality. Online, these teens are bombarded with messages that celebrate control, hatred toward women, and unchecked rage. They're being lured into these toxic spaces. Red pill forums, incel groups, so-called grind set culture that dangle false promises of belonging and purpose. But what are they really getting? Poison.
What's behind the anger and resentment felt by some young boys and men? It's an issue tackled by the Netflix mini-series Adolescence, which has sparked a global debate on toxic masculinity, rejection, as well as violence against women and girls.
The message of toxic masculinity is not only in the academy, it's also in our grade schools, where boys are increasingly treated like an illness in search of a cure.
The show highlights this worrying trend online, a group described as incels, which is involuntarily celibate.
Men who fail to attach to partners, careers, or communities are more susceptible to fringe theories and over-index on online forums filled with conspiracy and misogynist content and misinformation.
So we're talking about a mainstreaming of a really abusive kind of masculinity, normalizing a level of misogyny that is just unspeakable.
There are a lot of young men who are isolated, who are lonely, who are sad, who are in many ways seeking connections, but what they're getting is a message that the solution to their problems is doubling down on misogyny, abuse, and treating women like dirt.
This is not genetic. Boys aren't born angry or lost. They become that way when we ignore their pain, mute their voices, and leave them adrift without guidance. If we don't step up right now, these teenage boys will keep drowning in the cesspool of the internet. Take Rachel. She's a single mom who noticed her 11-year-old boy parroting some online influencer spouting garbage about women being gold diggers. She says she knew she had to step in and de-pill her son.
We all know that the red pill grifters are profiting off of the insecurities and the guilt and the shame of the men and boys that they're getting their hands on.
If you give a man true free reign, he's going to drive a fast car, he's going to have a bunch of women, he's going to want to have a bunch of money, he's going to do whatever he wants, right?
As somebody whose son was red pilled like 3 or 4 years ago, I feel like it's really important for me to speak up and speak out about how exactly I managed to deprogram him from that. So we would sit and watch a video and I would be like, so how would you feel if you spoke to me like that?
Whether a woman wants to be a lawyer or a housemaker or a webcam girl, unless she has a man directing her, she's gonna up. They're just not built to be completely independent creatures.
And that's when we started going to the conversation of, okay, so why do you think he's saying stuff like that?
Women's job always was procreation, to look after the family and to look after the man.
And we would have those kinds of conversations where I would really make him think about what other people were thinking and feeling. And it was uncomfortable sometimes, but we would speak about it anyway. And now we talk about pretty much anything. I was so shocked that he was red pilled, but it is what it is.
Well, Rachel, thank you for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, I've listened very carefully and read everything that you've shared with us. Tell everyone when you first noticed your son spewing these comments, these beliefs, and changing who he was. When did this first start popping up?
It was about 3 to 4 years ago. We was just having a random conversation, and then he said something about women being gold diggers. And I just thought, that is such a strange thing for an 11-year-old boy to say. So where has he got that from? And then that was when we started having conversations about the way he'd heard this and why it seemed to resonate with him. And that's how it began, really.
Do you think he was looking for this kind of content? Was he seeking this out? Or do you think this started popping up through the algorithm? Did it seek him out or did he seek it out?
Well, since I started talking about this publicly, I have asked him, and he said every single video that he saw was just algorithm driven. He didn't search for anything like that, and I knew that he didn't as well because I used to check his Google search history, his YouTube searches, his messages, just things like that for his own safety online, obviously. And so I hadn't seen him searching for anything.
He wasn't saying, tell me about women, teach me about relationships, anything like that. It just started coming to him.
Yeah, he was watching a lot of content just from like gamer people. So they were playing like Minecraft and things like that. And then obviously, every so often these videos would just creep in. And the longer he watched them, the more they would be pushed out to him.
And which influencers did he start watching?
Oh, Andrew Tate, which is why it's funny that you should show him in that video, because those were the things that he was showing me. And those were the conversations that were driven by him.
And did he connect to that? I mean, I know he parroted some of those things back, but did that seem to scratch an itch with him? How did he respond to it emotionally?
I think that he found it entertaining, first and foremost. I think that's what it was. It was a form of entertainment for him. And then I don't think it really clicked in his head how dangerous it could be until I spoke to him about the possibility of this being said to me or to his cousins or, somebody that he cares about that's a woman.
And what do you think this red pill ideology is all about?
I have had a lot of people tell me that it promotes positive masculinity and it helps people to, come out of their shell and things like that. But I actually disagree. From what I've seen and heard from people, it preys on people when they're at the most vulnerable. So, when they're young and they're still trying to find out who they are, when they're going through a difficult time in a relationship, maybe a divorce, maybe they've been single for a while. I think it's predatory in nature more than anything. And I think it's really detrimental to a lot of the boys and men that are engaging with it.
Do you think it's just a marketing ploy? Do you think that it's something that started out and people have identified a vulnerable population and are telling them what they want to hear, selling them what they'll buy? What do you think's behind it?
I think, maybe it is that. Maybe there is a niche in the market for boys and men to be able to connect with each other and create bonds. But obviously this red pill ideology has done that based on the idea of misogyny and I think a deep insecurity that runs within men as well, because obviously they are looking for male acceptance, male appreciation and things like that. But I do think that a lot of it just comes down to grifters, because I can't honestly sit here and say that men who are doing well in life would then sit down on a podcast and be horrible to women, would be, mean to men about the way that they look and the amount of money that they've got bringing in, that they're bringing in. They wouldn't do all of that. Like, this is, who's profiting off of men feeling this way? Do you know what I mean? I feel like that's what we need to get to the heart of. If they're profiting from this.
You've heard me talk about Jace Medical. If not, listen up, because they're doing incredible work in medical preparedness. And today, I've got two major updates to share. First up, the ivermectin use case. You've probably seen the headlines calling it a wonder drug. The scientist who discovered it even won a Nobel Prize. And now Jace is offering a 30-day supply at the best price you'll find anywhere. Next, the upgraded Jace case, an emergency supply of antibiotics delivered to your door. They've doubled the number of medications to 10 at just $20 more. And now, the most comprehensive and affordable kit available. Get it before you need it. Don't wait, order today. Visit jace.com and use code PHIL at checkout for a special discount. That's JASE.com, code PHIL. Well, I believe we have a whole generation of boys who feel like they're on the outside looking in. And they aren't just confused, they feel like they're invisible. They're not in the game. Now, two young men embody this crisis. Gabriel, who recounts how bullying and rejection drew him into the red and black pill ideologies. And we're going to talk about what that really means, because I don't think people know what we're talking about. And now identifies as a former incel. And meanwhile, 23-year-old John Doe, who wishes to remain anonymous, fearing harassment, still identifies as part of the incel community. He describes a world that abandoned him, leaving him stranded in isolation. So welcome to both of you. Thank you guys for joining us here. John, let me start with you, if I can. Tell me how you feel positioned right now, because you feel really excluded and isolated. Tell me how you do feel. Don't let me put words in your mouth.
In person, it does feel rather lonely. I don't really have many people I can go to. I've got about one friend and maybe some family, even though I don't really speak about this situation with family. I tend to keep my inceldom really private unless it's online.
Okay, and you're anonymous here, so hopefully you can speak freely. And I know it's hard to think about the fact that you're completely anonymous right now, so nobody knows who you are, so you can speak freely. Tell me how you wound up feeling the way you're feeling. You said at 16, you started identifying as an incel after years of being bullied by girls and boys. Tell me how you define incel as you sit here today.
Well, I think the name incel is pretty self-explanatory. Some people tend to just like wave it over their heads without really finding out what it truly means. And to be involuntarily celibate, it's not exactly our choice. It's involuntary.
Right. And you said from the 5th grade on, you felt like an outcast. But at what point did you decide that you were not attractive, that you weren't going to be someone that had social relevance to females, that it wasn't in the cards for you? When did you decide that?
Probably just started noticing it around in high school time. It's not like I've really linked that to my life. I still try time and time again. Even like till this day, I still try and go out, and it's not chaining me down, but time and time again, it's just I've noticed the same thing over and over and over again, being treated the same way.
And have you ever had a relationship with a female?
No.
But it's something that you do strive for. It's something that you do want.
Yes.
Okay. And you think looks matter? First impression? You think that not that it will be the be-all, end-all of a relationship, but you think that's important for getting someone to be attracted initially?
Very much so, yes.
And you think that's something that holds you back?
Yes, being a short guy myself, I tend to just be overlooked by a lot of women, and I've even noticed that some just retaliate and discuss whenever I'm near. It's very disheartening to see.
All right. And Gabriel, you're listening to what John is saying. What would you say about, and this is you're on a different point on the timeline from him, but you grew up being made fun of. What do you think about what John is saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Like these experiences, when you grow up unattractive and when your brain is also not necessarily wired to be the most social person, it creates a negative feedback loop that really destroys your self-confidence, and eventually you end up wondering, what's wrong with me? How can I seek female companionship? Things like that. And so, yeah, you go on the internet, you search how to get girls, those kinds of questions. And as a result, you engage with that type of content, and eventually you go from blue pill to red pill to black pill.
Okay, and just in very succinct terms, tell me what you mean when you say blue pill.
Okay, so blue pill is basically the mainstream view of the world and of dating. Like, just be a nice person, just have a good personality, beauty is on the inside, those types of things that you hear growing up, yeah.
And red pill, define that, what you mean by that.
So red pill, it's It's a huge thing. There's many aspects to it, but if I could put it down very simply, it's be alpha, be the man, be a little bit of a jerk because girls kind of like that, make money, get high status. So all of these different behavioral fixes.
And Rachel, that's what you were concerned about starting to see in your son, was that kind of behavior, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned. I don't want him to end up feeling the way that either of these guys have felt. I think we can all agree that that's not anything we want anybody to feel, especially not young men and teenage boys. So I wanted to make sure that he didn't go down that line, of questioning himself.
This episode is brought to you by Masa Chips. For decades, chips were fried in tallow until big corporations switched to cheap seed oils. Now, seed oils make up 20% of the average American's daily calories, linked to inflammation and metabolic issues. Masa is bringing back the good stuff with 3 simple ingredients: organic nixtamalized corn, sea salt, and 100% grass-fed beef tallow. No seed oils, no junk, just a crunchy, sturdy chip that won't break in your guac. Masa Chips is beloved by tens of thousands of customers and has been endorsed by industry-leading health and nutrition experts like Ben Greenfield and Gary Brecka. Ready to give Masa a try? Go to masachips.com/merit and use code MERIT for 25% off your first order. That's masachips.com/merit and code MERIT for 25% off your first order.
My number one thing I'm working on at the moment is the War Room. And what we do for our members is we teach them how to make more money. We talk a lot about mental programming stuff. I teach everything I know about the pimp game from head to toe. Because women are women and men are men, right? So I'm like, if I can use this and 20 women gave me a bunch of money, your woman can make you a coffee. Look, frame it this way, say it this way. So I teach everything about that. And the goal is to try and create men who are sovereign and they live very good lives.
Well, that was Andrew Tate drawing attention to the manosphere. His videos have been watched over 12.7 billion times. That's with a B. William Costello is a doctoral researcher of evolutionary psychology at the University of Texas, and he is one of the few researchers studying incels from the inside out. He's interviewed over 150 self-identified incels, young men who say they're trapped in loneliness, rejection, and despair. And these are young men. William, thank you for being here, and tell us how you started researching incel behavior and why you felt the need to do this.
Thanks for having me. So we got interested in this topic because we're evolutionary human mating psychologists. So we research the psychology that underpins how humans find and retain romantic partners and everything that goes into that. So it was interesting to me to find a modern group of young men who became so disillusioned with modern mating that they come to the conclusion that they're incels, so involuntary celibate. Incels are an online subculture of men who form the conclusion that because of their physical attractiveness, they can't form romantic relationships. They advocate for taking the black pill, which means accepting the particularly bleak truth that for physically unattractive men, they consider it not worthwhile to even participate. Incels are often very misogynistic in these online forums where they rant to each other. And their misogyny, I think, can be summed up with the Jim Morrison song lyric that women seem wicked when you're unwanted. And we find time and time again in the research that it's what we call low mate value men who struggle in the mating market, that those are the guys that misogyny is most pronounced with. And so given how important human relationships are, romantic relationships are to humans, I thought it would be very interesting to dig into the psychology of what's going on with men who feel excluded from that world. And there was a lot of attention on this group at the time, but not a lot of empirical research. So I thought it would be useful to add some actual science to the conversation.
Well, I'm curious about this because both John and Gabriel have had bullying experiences, rejection experiences, but one thing we know in psychology is we respond not to what happens in our lives, but what we say to ourselves about what happens in our lives. What's our internal dialogue? And they've both had some challenging things. You know, Gabriel, at a young age, overheard some girls saying he should get a degree in ugliness, that he, was, just being made fun of and ridiculed. Now, he had a choice about what he said to himself about that, whether he internalized that. And we know that people tend to take over for the bullies and start repeating it to themselves. The bully might say it once, but then the target can repeat it 1,000 times. So they take over for the bully and really do their work for them. But there are alternatives. They can also reject that and create rational alternatives to it and seek out other experiences, and some do, some don't. With so much going on in your life, it can be easy to neglect your diet. Balance of Nature fruits and veggies supplements have 31 ingredients made from fruits and vegetables. They're a fast and simple way to get a wide and colorful variety that fits right into your busy schedule. Just 3 fruits and 3 veggies supplements daily with some water, that's it. Whether you're off to spend time with your grandchildren or on your favorite hike, you can rely on these convenient supplements to be there every step of the way. Start your journey with Balance of Nature. Call 1-800-246-8751 or go to balanceofnature.com to get a free fiber and spice supplement, plus 35% off your first preferred set as a new preferred customer with free shipping and our money-back guarantee. Go to balanceofnature.com or call 1-800-246-8751 and get this special offer by using discount code Dr. Phil. That's DRPHIL. What is it about those that wind up in this category that you're referring to as incels? Is there something that predisposes them to this self-perception where they wind up as incels?
Yes, I think what you're describing is a negative feedback loop. So there is a psychological disposition among incels to be highly rejection sensitive and have a tendency for interpersonal victimhood and a self-verification tendency whereby they actively seek out information from the world that verifies their negative self-perception and negative view of the world. We recently published some research that I was optimistic about, which finds that incels overestimate the hostility that society holds for them, and they underestimate the sympathy. Now, in that paper, I wanted to be very careful to acknowledge that there genuinely is some hostility that incels face. So firstly, physically unattractive people do face a lot of genuine discrimination. There's a whole research line called lookism that shows the ways in which physically unattractive people are discriminated against. But we also find that there's actual bullying. Incels themselves report a childhood history of bullying, but there's also bullying that happens to incels right now. They're one of the only groups that you can go online and punch down as much as you want. The term incel functions as an insult, and there are whole forums dedicated to literally bullying incels. So, for example, one of these forums, the bullying of incels got so bad that they had to instantiate a rule asking their contributors to no longer encourage suicide of incels. And in our research, we find enormously high levels of suicidal ideation among incels. So it's with that in mind, this type of bullying seems very, very cruel.
Well, clearly there is bullying, and attractiveness or whatever is subjective, of course. We know that. You may have noticed that I have thinning hair. I'm bald as a cue ball. And there's a lot of research that it's one of the worst things men can experience, is like, oh my God, I'm bald. And their self-image plummets from that. I've had a lot of practice at being bald for a long, long time, so I choose for it to not bother me. But others, it's devastating to their self-image and self-esteem. So people do have a choice about how they respond to their physical appearance. So there is a predisposition to, not everybody that has, let's say there was some subjective categorization of how they look. There are people that are predisposed, as you said, to be more sensitive to it than others. And so there are some that are more likely to fall into this categorization of incel or certainly the victimhood of being bullied than others. And we do know that there are differences there between individual differences between people, correct?
Yes, so a couple of things to pick up on there. Dr. Phil, you may be pleased to know that bald men also have higher levels of testosterone, so that actually perhaps makes them paradoxically more attractive to women in other domains. But to take your point, physical attractiveness is not completely subjective. There are objective markers of physical attractiveness. So one example for men is height. But you're right that that doesn't mean that all short men can never form relationships. I'm quite short myself, and I've never had a problem with relationships. But to give incels their due, there is also research to show that there's a threshold effect of a certain level of physical attractiveness that men must cross over before other qualities come into play. Now, incels refuse to acknowledge our research that shows that they overestimate the importance of physical attractiveness to women. It's actually men that prioritize physical attractiveness in their mate choice far more than women do. Women tend to care about a more holistic range of qualities such as status, such as resources, such as kindness, intelligence, lots of different things. But they do care somewhat about physical attractiveness. And one thing that might be going on is that online dating has become enormously popular now. It's one of the main ways in which young people meet each other. And that puts a massive overemphasis on the physical attractiveness. Physical attractiveness is almost, it's like the only feature that matters in that initial online dating attractiveness market. So incels, we have research to show that they specifically struggle in online dating, and that's no surprise if their other personality qualities don't get a chance to shine. Take, for example, if you are a short man, you could actually be filtered out by the height filters in online dating. So that could be perhaps putting a greater emphasis on the physical attractiveness and leading incels to the conclusion that they can never form relationships because they don't succeed in these physical attractiveness-oriented markets.
Yeah, that's such a good point. That's such a good point. Gabriel, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with William that the emphasis on physical attractiveness has become much higher because people meet predominantly online nowadays. Now, I would say that when it comes to the importance of looks, there's two roads in which you can go to. So you can either take this type of knowledge and apply it to something like looks maxing, which is improving your appearance as much as possible. Or you can go the other route of compensating for it, like acquiring resources, status, things like that. But I think the thing about incels is that they want genuine desire. They actually want girls to look at them the way they look at the attractive guy from high school that pulled all the girls. It's really that desire that they want. It's more than just getting a girlfriend.
Hey, Dr. Phil here. My network, Merit TV, has it all.
Now, let me blow your mind.
Merit TV's got the news that matters.
The selection of a new pope.
Entertainment you crave.
Busted. Everybody in a good mood today?
And live events.
Surprise.
What am I, chopped liver?
With serious punch.
Big shot.
Go to merittv.com and download the Merit TV app today.